perhaps overcomplicated what physical activity looks like for a lot of people in real terms. And as women as well, we find that a lot of people that are trying to make changes, we have that all or nothing mindset. So we try to, at the moment, if you're new to trying to make new habits, you might think, I don't have that spare hour. I don't have the time to go to something and join in with something, to pre-book, to commit, to drive and to get there. So therefore we don't do it at all. Whereas actually, if we make use of the resources on our doorstep, we can fit in a 15-minute walk. If you did that a few times a week, that has got value. And that is really important to understand that we don't have to have the full-on several hours at a time for something to be effective. These little micro sections of movement have all got impact on how we benefit from them.
Midlife really can be a tricky time for women, and the more we talk about the ways we can navigate it, the better, in my opinion. Movement has a powerful role to play in helping manage adverse symptoms, as well as helping prevent issues as we age. Dr. Laura and Dr. Katie created the Lifestyle Health Clinic to be able to give women more time to look at their whole lifestyle and really be able to work with them to see the power they have within themselves to make positive changes. I love chatting with this passionate pair about the role of movement, the best types of movement at this time of life, the role the gut plays, and the various other parts of women's lifestyle that can all be improved to help achieve an optimal and happy state. With lots of practical tips and a brilliantly positive outlook, this is a great conversation for anyone looking ahead to midlife or even having passed midlife, as it's never too late to make changes. So midlife can potentially be quite a roller coaster. In your clinic, you see lots of midlife women who are struggling with perimenopause symptoms. What proportion of these do you recommend some form of movement or exercise?
Yeah, everyone. I mean, it forms a massive part of what we talk to our patients about. We focus heavily on lifestyle because it does have such a massive part to play in hormonal symptoms and chronic sort of long-term health conditions. Without fail, we talk about movement with every single patient that comes through our clinic because it's so important.
Absolutely. Agreed. Tick. With those particular type of symptoms that women often experience in this stage, what sort of benefits do you see of exercising to help them with those symptoms?
Oh, there's so many, Wendy, in terms of the benefits, and you can divide it up into different ways. But if you start off with just the basics, moving away from perhaps the stereotypical changing how somebody looks or appearance or numbers on a scale, the benefits of achievement, the benefits of joining in with something, having time for yourself, the mental health benefits. We're huge advocates for movement outside in whatever way that looks like for that person, that lady in front of us. And it can take different approaches, and it might not be the same day in, day out or week in, week out. But the joy of moving just for that on its own is huge, and it gives a sense of purpose really to a lot of women and structure. And then you get the physical benefits, of course, so reduced intensity of symptoms. So in midlife, when you might be getting things like joint pains, sweats, fatigue, palpitations, breathlessness, actually sometimes there's a fear of moving, but actually to get moving can improve a lot of those symptoms for a lot of women. Then you get the benefits around that as well. So it's multidimensional, really. But we've yet to come across a woman that hasn't benefited. So we continue to bang the drum because it looks different for everybody. But we've yet to find someone where there's not something in some form that suits for them to get some form of gain.
That's such a brilliant message, isn't it? Because if you don't find something that is for you, you're just not going to keep doing it, are you? And I think one of the downsides of the lovely symptoms, whether it's lethargy or you're having awful hot flushes, whatever the thing is, a lot of them make you quite uncomfortable anyway. And you don't particularly want to be, we haven't got the energy, or you're lacking drive and motivation. I've covered all of these myself. And so you don't quite feel like it. So it's a really big push to do something. And yet in society, there's often a thing about exercise in inverted commas. And I think it's seen as, the real sort of pushing it, no pain, no gain, sweat till you drop type of thing, where actually, as I advocate a lot, just moving more is still hugely beneficial all the way up to the scale to wherever you want to end on that scale, in essence. So it's brilliant to hear you helping the person, the woman, find their thing that's hopefully going to be tenable in the long term.
Yeah, we always ask ladies sort of what they've done in the past that they've enjoyed, so if they've, if they are lacking in motivation, it's trying to bring up those memories of how they felt when they've done exercise in the past, whether that's going out for a walk or whether that's doing some yoga or swimming. More often than not, people have lost their way, and might have enjoyed something in the past and have lost the ability to pick that up again. So, as you say, there's no point doing an exercise or a class that you don't enjoy. It needs to bring enjoyment, and whether that's something by yourself or whether that's something in a class or a group setting, outdoors, indoors, everybody's different, and it's just whatever works for you, isn't it?
And there's a lot of talk around the importance of strength training. So what's your view on that, and how do you help women, particularly those who are not the sort of gym bunny or previously gym bunny types, to build in that kind of thing to help not just their symptoms, but also bone density and so on?
Absolutely. Have you heard of the term exercise snacking, Wendy?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm sure your audience, if they are familiar, will have come across it before, but perhaps if they're new to this term. So as we say, movement or physical activity is probably the phrase that we use more than, say, exercise.
Absolutely.
And breaking up the day. So if it's somebody that's working at home, or a sedentary job, it doesn't have to be home working, but obviously we've had a big push towards that in the last few years. But movement to break up that sitting sedentary posture of being still has so many benefits in terms of bringing on that muscle mass eventually. And just listening to your body and thinking, gosh, do I feel a bit stiff? Do I feel like I could do with a stretch? That really can help motivate you to start thinking about how it feels good to let your skeleton and your body move. So little snippets. So if you're sat down most of the day, 5 or 10 minutes, can you go further away from your desk in whatever environment? So can you use the bathroom on a different floor if that's relevant to you? Can you get a drink from somewhere else? Can you build in something else during the day so that you, over time, those little fragments actually build up to have a significant impact on weight bearing and for your muscle strength? Because if you don't use it, you lose it. And, moving your skeleton in that way will definitely help your muscles and your muscle memory to build, and you'll get the benefits from that rather than thinking that you have to be lifting dumbbells and kettlebells straight up. That's a good place to start with your body weight work, and simple movements that are everyday movements is a good place.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you agree, Katie?
Yeah, definitely. And I think people are quite fearful of the word sort of muscle mass and strength training, because you automatically think of, as you say, sort of, the people lifting really heavy things in the gym, but actually anything that builds up muscle is a form of strength training. So whether that's, having some weights at home, don't have to be heavy ones, so you can start off with 1, 2, 3 kilogram weights, whether it's resistant bands, which we're real fans of in our clinic because they're really versatile and easy, sort of the elastic bands that you can put around your legs or use them for arm exercises, other things like yoga, Pilates, swimming, dancing. They're all forms of strength exercises. So anything that builds muscle mass, and just incorporating movement into your everyday life is where you start to build up muscle. So you don't have to be fearful of that phrase.
And to talk about one of my favorite things is getting down to the ground and back up, because it's something that can get really lost and actually it's quite underestimated. It takes a lot to push your entire body weight off the ground. If you were to go into a gym and lift your weight, your own body weight in your hands, that's pretty tough. But actually when you're pushing off, you are really really working against gravity to do that. So for me, I kind of think it's such a great skill, that because it's so practical for the future, but also every time you do it, especially if, as I like to encourage, if you do it in lots of different ways, you're using your structure differently every time, but it's so strengthening. And the whole, as you said, Laura, the whole use it or lose it is really, really true for that. And that can then become quite, a scary thing if you are going to fall. We're all going to fall at some point, and then you can't get yourself back up. You can't get yourself to help, or whatever, which is kind of the drastic end of the spectrum. But it's a reality, particularly for many gym buddies, even as they age, because it's a pattern. And you talked about muscle memory. It's really important that we have that ability in our body to do that. One thing I was going to say, I really wanted to ask about as well, was cardio, because there's a lot of chat around cardio. And some people really love cardio. I personally found when I started to get perimenopausal symptoms that I would be exhausted by sort of mid to late afternoon if I did the same amount that I used to do. And so I've mixed it up. I'm doing more strength training. I do a lot more natural movement, obviously. But, is that the same for most people? And is cardio, you feel like it's necessary because you're like, okay, I want the heart health. And yet I know that every time I get up and down off the ground, my heart raises and lowers. So I'm kind of doing a mini HIIT session every time. But and I walk. So I kind of see my cardio as a longer walk if I can. But is that what most people find? And is it good, bad, or can we not use those words?
Do you want to answer, Katie, or shall I go?
Go on, you go.
So I think, we've used that word cardio for a long time, and we do need to do something that increases our heart rate, but we don't have to go all out for a full-on sweat every single time. And as you rightly say, walking is that. And walking is simple but so effective. I think we've moved away from that. We've perhaps overcomplicated what physical activity looks like for a lot of people in real terms. And as women as well, we find that a lot of people that are trying to make changes, we have that all or nothing mindset. So we try to at the moment, if you're new to trying to make new habits, you might think, I don't have that spare hour. I don't have the time to go to something and join in with something, to pre-book, to commit, to drive and to get there. So therefore we don't do it at all. Whereas actually, if we make use of the resources on our doorstep, we can fit in a 15-minute walk. If you did that a few times a week, that has got value. And that is really important to understand that we don't have to have the full on several hours at a time for something to be effective. These little micro sections of movement have all got impact on how we benefit from them. So cardio is good. Yes, absolutely, get your heart rate up. But again, that can look different to different women.
And that can be when you're walking, upping your rate from one lamppost to the next, can't it? And then, easing off, trying to get your breath back. But just that push, that's enough, isn't it, really?
Absolutely.
And it's building on things as well. So as you say, if you start with a 10-minute walk and do that 3 times a week, and then before you know it, you think, oh God, I feel brilliant after doing that. So you'll do it 4 days a week, 5 days a week. You'll go for 15 minutes or 20 minutes. It's doing things, small changes consistently that you will build on with time. That sort of building new habits and things. And, nobody's ever going to feel worse for doing a little bit of exercise. So
it's true. It's one of the very few things where literally, I suppose if you've pushed yourself to the nth degree and it's something you hate, then you knew what the outcome was going to be anyway, because you've got so many other barriers around it that you've got to crash through. But actually, if it is something you enjoy, it's rare that I literally never go for a walk and come back and think, oh, I really wish I hadn't done that. And particularly when we're talking about low energy, for me, when it's, been a day I've been struggling, it's the perfect way to lift myself mentally and actually create more energy, interestingly, particularly if I don't go for too long. It's just enough to sort of just shift everything.
And there's a reason for that, sort of there's a lot of evidence to suggest that, when you do exercise, you release you release your happy hormones, these serotonin levels go up. So it makes you feel better, just by virtue of being outdoors, getting that vitamin D and the sunlight can have huge beneficial effects on all sorts of sort of systems, including sort of your sleep quality, your mental health, your emotional health, your physical health, so just even as a short bursts of getting outdoors, will never make you feel worse. Never.
Yeah, very true. Well said. So in your clinic, I love your Instagram page. So you're at the Lifestyle Health Clinic. Is that correct? Got that right?
Yes,
that's correct.
Yeah. It's great because you are also, you're walking the talk, because you're showing getting moving even at your desk in your clinic. You're showing little bits of movement where, like you talked about resistance bands, you're including that and you're getting going. And I think that's a rare thing. We don't often see that in people in the medical profession. So I think that's brilliant, because you're showing how to, and it's really important. I think we messaged, and in one message you said something about your resistance bands and your kettlebells are in your doctor's kit alongside your stethoscope, and I love that. And I can almost see a little icon of the two, but there'd probably be quite a few things to fit in that icon, covering what you look at. One thing that I have spotted on your website that just got me thinking was also about gut health. And again, we hear a lot of talk about gut health, particularly as regards nutrition. I don't talk a lot. I don't talk at all, in fact, about nutrition, because that's not my specialist area. But it did make me think, well, hang on, our guts are really affected by the way we move. And I often talk about sitting, for example, on the front edge of your chair so that your pelvis is upright. But also what I don't often talk about is the fact that then allows you, to breathe better, right nicely into your diaphragm. And that's obviously really calming. But also the fact that lets your guts splay nicely and actually do what they need to do. But then, so that's just in terms of sitting, if you have to sit, but then also the fact that when you're moving, you're kind of massaging your guts and so on. Tell us a bit more about the importance of gut health, particularly as regards symptoms for menopause.
Oh, I could talk about gut health all day long, Wendy. I love gut health. I love talking about tummies.
Go.
Well, we have to, if we understand the gut is a muscle, I think, so we've talked a lot about muscles already,
yes.
But the gut itself, so it's smooth muscle and it's moving, and its job is to move our nutrition through our body and allow us to absorb what we can from it and then get rid of what we don't need. So we have to treat it really well for it to function well. And then within that, we've got our bacteria that are living and thriving in there. And it's like a factory, if you like a powerhouse. And the good ones are really good at their job, and they function well when their environment's great. So they need good nutrition, they need exercise and movement just like we do. So the benefits of moving actually impact. The research tells us that the amount of the good ones, the good guys in there, are actually better proportion. There's more of them if we're active.
And that's what we need, is it? We want the proportion to be in favour of the good much more. Do we need bad gut? I've never asked anyone that. Do we need the bad guys for some purpose?
It's a balance. It's about which ones are more prevalent to do the essential job. So it's about the balance and how that looks. So there's not a set way of measuring how much exercise is, do this much and this will definitely change your gut, because it depends on the environment and what else is around. But we know that by having movement, that the balance between the ones that are there will thrive, that the ones that are needed will thrive better, and we'll have more of them, and they will then do their job better and allow that passage and transition, as well as the fibre around and everything else that goes with gut health. But from a movement point of view, absolutely. I'm a big fan of 10 or 15 minute walking after eating, just to allow the system to be upright, to be mobile. It helps stabilise our response to food, but also, as you say, that posture certainly does help things.
And in relation to hormones, how is the gut related to hormones? If you see what I mean, because I've in the past thought that hormones were very much coming from the brain. and not the gut. But I believe that's not correct.
So we're learning more and more with research about the communication between the gut and the gut-brain axis it's called. So there's a huge connection going on, and they're talking to each other all the time. So, you know, the healthier your gut microbiome, those sort of good bugs in your gut are, you know, the better your mental health. We know that it can have an impact on various menopausal symptoms. You know, the better your gut health is, the less symptoms you get. And sort of when it comes to bowel symptoms, we see around the menopause and the perimenopause, we see a lot of change to digestive symptoms. So you've got a lot of estrogen receptors all over your body, but especially around your bowel and your gut. And so we see people presenting with indigestion, heartburn, irritable bowel syndrome like symptoms,
bloating.
change in bowel habit, bloating. Really common. And if we can assess the sort of the healthiness of their gut and make improvements, that often helps. And the gut, in terms of sort of menopause, is also it's responsible for metabolizing and getting rid of some of your estrogen level, your estrogen and your hormones and things. So it keeps them. It's got a role in keeping sort of your hormones under control as well. So again, sort of, you know, you can't go wrong with trying to have a healthier gut as possible.
So research more about gut. Go to their page and read about gut.
And it's the happy hormones. You know, our happy hormones are made in our tummy. 90% of serotonin, which is that chemical that we think is all up here in our minds. We need it up there, but your tummy makes that. That's a really eye-opening fact, I think, in terms of making that association as to why we do these different things and how relevant they are. I think saying, you know, it makes things better, we know that, but that's the connection, and that's how they talk to each other inside.
And which is very interesting, because often women have been, and probably very much still are, misdiagnosed as having depression, when in fact you're saying, you know, try the gut first, have a look at what's going on there, because that may absolutely change the picture. And 90%, that's quite incredible.
It's a huge amount.
Yeah, with mental health symptoms in general, you know, sort of moving more, you know, there's evidence to suggest that it's just as good as antidepressants if you can sort of get some exercise in, and that releases, as we talked about again, the serotonin, and changing your diet as well, and sort of really improving your diet, you know, can have huge implications in your mood, whether that's menopause and perimenopause or just normal sort of anxiety and depression symptoms. Huge role for lifestyle.
Yeah, and also liquids as well, presumably being hydrated is important for the gut.
Absolutely. It makes up the transition of the nutrition through your gut so much easier. So fiber is our friend when it comes to gut health. But to have fiber working properly, it needs to have a lot of water and fluid of the right consistency, the right chemicals. So we're talking water, less caffeine, less alcohol, I'm afraid, around it to allow the fiber to work and to move. Because the fiber, again, is the environment that those bugs are thriving in. And it helps the movement along and to stop things sitting and being stagnant. So you definitely need to be hydrated for that to happen. And then your demands on the body, you think how much water the body's made up of, you're going to use more if you're active, and you've got all these functions going on and stress associated with the changes of hormones, then you need more fluid than before, which at a time when pelvic floor symptoms may be having an impact, naturally women say, oh, you know, I don't drink very much because of symptoms with their bladder. Actually, our message is to drink more, but to address the barriers to that, so that you can hydrate in the proper way to allow those essential functions.
Yeah. No, it's really fascinating, and it's great that there's so much more information available on that. I think particularly in terms of the effect with depression, because obviously that really is, you know, a massive problem and a difficult one to address. It's something where people obviously have to talk about it openly. And in this context, you wouldn't necessarily associate it with midlife. And for me, when I really knew I was in perimenopause was when I just basically stopped sleeping overnight, and having been like a log, 8 hours, no problem, never questioned it for years. Well, apart from when I had kids, clearly. But, you know, that gap in between, I'd gone back to what was my normal. But actually then when I looked back, the mental health symptoms, the anxiety, and low confidence and so on were all there for years if I really think about it. So it is such a, and all of that affects whether you want to move or not. All of that affects whether you feel okay about yourself to be moving, or let's say to be seen to be moving by others. And that's such a shame, because that's, you know, it's an unfortunate barrier, because it becomes a downward cycle, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, definitely. But yeah, there's so many benefits from a mental health point of view, and you know, for when it comes to hormones, like I would say, sort of, you know, probably 90% of the women we see in clinic, it's depression, anxiety that they're struggling with. You know, there's a reason that we have a box of tissues on the table in our appointments, because, you know, the emotional and mental health side of things. And often it isn't, they're not aware that that's what's going on. It's their hormones are to blame. You know, people think, oh, menopause, perimenopause, you know, older women, hot flushes, night sweats. I've not got any of those. So, but actually the overwhelm and the depression, the anxiety, the irritability,
brain fog,
yeah,
word finding.
Yes, absolutely.
So
Whole sentence finding.
And it's so common that's, you know, that can sometimes be the presenting features. And as you say, sort of sometimes when you look back at how things have changed in recent years, and the penny drops, actually, yeah, I have had a lot going on, but I could normally have probably coped with this okay, and suddenly I can't cope with things that I would have normally coped with.
And I'm perhaps seeing that movement or that connection with that person or whatever it is, negatively, or in a way where I, you know, which I shouldn't be. And I kind of know I'm not, you know, this isn't me. And yet this is what's happening. And, you know, and the unfortunate effect of people sort of wanting to then isolate, not go out when they need it the most, is hard. And I think, you know, there's so much more information out there than there was, but I do think it's kind of, whether you have a friend or a relative, or you happen to be on Instagram, a lot of people aren't, or whatever, where they happen to see something that resonates, and then realize, because obviously also you can, I don't know if you're happy to share either of your stories, but you can go into perimenopause much earlier than you expect. And so when everyone's talking about, oh, you know, the 5 years before 50, and then bang, it'll finish at 50 and off you go. It's not quite that, is it?
No, and we have people ring us all the time and say that they've been told either by another professional or they're telling themselves it can't be this because they feel too young, or they are having periods still. Yeah. So, you know, the essential female functions are still happening. They may have even had a blood test somewhere that somebody said, oh, what we've measured is normal, and it closes the door. But actually, you know, periods stop on average for a woman in the UK at age 51, but perimenopause can be 10 years before that. And that's only if you're at the average age. There's that whole spectrum. And then there's the women that experience menopause symptoms far, far sooner, and often don't even know until they may be faced with fertility issues and trying to seek help that way. And I certainly don't mind sharing. I was 38 when I developed symptoms, and they weren't the conventional symptoms. It was joint pains. So my exercise ability went down unexplainably. And again, you know, I went through different channels to try and work out myself and sought help, but I didn't quite get there initially. But I think we have to realize that there's the average type of scenario that a woman might experience, but there's lots of these variations. We know that there's probably 40 to 50 symptoms, and periods are just one of those. So having that awareness and being in touch with our bodies and knowing what we're thinking and learning and may experience what's coming up actually is quite helpful. So women say, oh, I'm too young, this isn't relevant to me yet. But actually, we need to know these phases. We learn about periods and trying to avoid pregnancy when we're at school, don't we? You know, there's a big drive, you know, this is what shouldn't happen, and this is what could happen. But actually, we need to extend that knowledge base so that we know what the other phases are, so that we just have that sense and awareness around us.
And perhaps try to do it as positively as we can, so that it's actually, information is power, and you're still capable of everything if you want to be, but be ready and, you know, get out there, seek information, seek help, and know that you don't have to sort of struggle with suboptimal if that's happening to you at all. You really don't. There is so much out there where, you know, I didn't hear any of those messages certainly not when I was growing up. I suppose the challenge with younger people is if they've only just started their periods, they're not even thinking about having children, then it's so far off, I'm about to hit 50 and they're like, you're so old, mum. However, in this house, all three of my boys, you're like, stop talking about the menopause, mum. I'm bored of it.
Same in our house.
Yeah.
Well, I bet it is in your house. But, I just think, it's got to be a word that is used all around everyone, males, females, any people that need to hear it, old, young. It's so important, isn't it?
It needs to be seen as a more positive thing. It's all very easy to see it as oh God, I'm really symptomatic. I've got all these symptoms. I feel awful. I've lost myself. I need help.
And it is. We're not saying that it isn't at all.
We're not dampening it down at all. It can have massive life-changing effects, but it can also be seen as a positive as well. So, to reassess things, sort of take stock of your midlife and think about your future health. Changing your lifestyle. Eating healthier, eating sort of more plant-based foods, doing more exercise, becoming more mobile, prioritizing your sleep. There's so many things that you can do to help. So yeah, we're not downplaying it at all. We appreciate that it's it's massive and it can have massive implications, but it can also be seen as a positive as to what you can do to look to the future.
And look after yourself, prioritize yourself. I think often women who've had a family or who are incredibly busy at work in the sort of height of their career just can forget themselves, as men can as well, but obviously we're talking about menopause, so it really is about women. And then that's when it suddenly rushes up to you, because perhaps you've not had any symptoms normally, like any sore joints or you're used to a lack of sleep or whatever, and therefore you're not putting that time into yourself already. Whereas if you do from an earlier stage, perhaps there's an easier run in, and also you might have less severe symptoms, but also when a symptom does, jump out at you, like it did for me with my insomnia, you do link it straight away and think, okay, right, now's the time. I've been doing the things, but now I'm going to go and get extra help if I want to, if I want that help.
So it's encouraging women to allow themselves that time for themselves. We're all very busy. We're all spinning a lot of plates. We've all got children, teenagers, we've got elderly relatives, we're trying to hold down jobs, and allowing yourself that time to prioritize your health, because ultimately if you can't function, if you're not in your healthiest version you can be, you can't look after all these other people and run the house and the work and your career. And so it's allowing people that time to say, right, I'm having 15 minutes to myself now to go and do something for me. And I think that's really important to encourage women. Permission, absolutely, yeah.
I think we all deserve that as humans on this planet anyway. Why are we always thinking about others, or not, avoiding giving time to ourselves? It seems madness, because I love that saying about put your own oxygen mask on first before helping others. It makes so much sense, doesn't it? Although I have to remember, when I first heard it on the plane, I was like kind of working out, thinking, but then doesn't that mean? But no, it is. It's absolutely true, because you're useless. And often I think you do have that pressure that you think, if I go down, everybody goes down. And it's not just like birthdays and things will be forgotten, but there's a lot more, because we do tend to carry all the minutiae on top of everything else, like how much wrapping paper's in the cupboard and nonsense like that we really don't need to store in our brains, quite frankly. But we do. Listen, we've talked a lot about movement, and I often talk about when something's not right in the body. I'll always say to people, look, if you go and get help with the thing, make sure that person that you see doesn't just look at the thing, because we're a whole body and mind. We absolutely work together. The way we've lived our lives and what's happened to us over our lives affects everything. And so that thing may just be a symptom of something very different. And that's very much, you've got a sore shoulder. How's your back working? Are you struggling from stress, so you're holding your shoulders up all the time, et cetera, et cetera? It's the whole picture, which, And that's your deal. The reason that you set up the Lifestyle Health Clinic is because you wanted to give people time to look at the whole picture and the whole person, which is what I absolutely love. And I would love it if that was the future of healthcare, obviously. And GPs had the time to be able to do that. I love the fact that you have on your website doing a midlife MOT, because it's looking at everything. To pass your MOT, you've got to look at all the bits to make sure you're safe to be on the road. And it is that, isn't it? So tell me about all the way that you would go about that with someone that came into your clinic that was just saying, I'm just not right.
Do you know that is one of the most common phrases we hear? I just don't feel right. So there'll be all these symptoms, but those few words we hear time and time again, and it is looking at top to bottom. So it's looking at those six. We split it into 6 systems. So we try and get as much information from a patient even before an appointment. So they'll fill in a questionnaire so that we've got some background, so we understand, so that during that appointment time, we've got the best value really of exploring those things. And women say to us, oh, I didn't realise until I had to write it down on that form that I don't have breakfast, or I eat at 11 o'clock at night, and I do wake up in the morning and I pick up my phone at the minute that the alarm clock goes off, and I'm sucked in, and I'm on my emails. So that really, in a non-obstructive way, without anybody else around, allows a woman to put everything down. And again, we say when patients book in with us, we say, give yourself 20 minutes to fill in that form to your best ability, so that you reflect on your habits and what's actually a day in the life of you, because then we know where we're coming from, so that whatever recommendations we're thinking of are actually more suited to you. This is an experienced menopause. No 2 stories are the same. It's very individual. So we need to know all about you and what life looks like for you, I'd say. Would you agree, Katie, in terms of that phrase?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Because there's no point making recommendations in terms of lifestyle, for somebody who, doesn't have, if they're working sort of, 8 a.m. till 8 p.m, there's no point then telling them to fit in a gym session. We've got
Absolutely.
to think, right, what's realistic in your daily activities, because that's the only way you're going to introduce new things and change habits, if it's realistic and sustainable. So that's why we take into account everything, and address every area with lifestyle. So we look at sort of the diet and nutrition of a patient. We look at the physical activity and how much movement they're getting. We look at their sleep and their sleep quality and quantity. We look at their emotional and mental health. We look at any harmful substances like drinking, smoking, drugs, and what have I missed, Laura? Social connection.
Stress and social connection.
The power of social connection is huge. And around midlife, people often do think that they're too busy to connect with others, or, lose their confidence in mixing with others and sort of isolate. We see a lot of ladies who are isolated.
Yeah.
And that's just not good for hormonal symptoms or mental health. So it's encouraging, and again, suggesting and making recommendations for how they might start to improve those things.
And I think that women undervalue that and don't often realise that it's happening. We say, isolation is not healthy. We know that loneliness is a really poor predictor of health, and we just keep going. We just keep running the race and keep going day in, day out. But one of the questions that we ask is, how many times did you connect with somebody that wasn't on your phone in the last 2 weeks? And it really does make you stop and think, actually, we think that we're well connected in a world where we're getting data thrown at us every time we look around us. It's coming at us in some direction, whether we're buying something online, reading an email, adverts. We're just conditioned to have all of this around us, but actually true connections with a person, a human, side by side. And we talk a lot more when we're not looking at somebody. Sometimes we open up more when we're not looking at somebody. To talking and having that dialogue is so powerful. That social connection doesn't, I think some people think, well, why do you need to know about that in the appointment? But actually that is quite a big building block and it feeds into stress and sleep. And, if you're tired, you don't eat as well because you can't think, and then you don't move as much. It's all, it's the puzzle, isn't it? It's the puzzle. Those pieces of the jigsaw puzzle all make up that individual person.
And they're all on a sort of a spiral together. They're linked so that if one shifts, it shifts the rest, rather than it being one in or out. They're all interconnected. Exactly. and they need that. I mean, from my own personal perspective, even if I'm out in the walk, if I've not seen anyone that day, if I've not coached a client, for example, in my studio, even sometimes if I've just been online with people, if I get out for a walk and I say hello to someone, so a total stranger, random, and my boy's old headmistress, when they were in little school, used to say, "Give a smile, get a smile." And I loved that phrase, because also sometimes people don't want to say hello as well. But if you do your best to make eye contact and you smile, it's rare that people won't smile back. And it's done something for both of you. It's so important. Go on.
My boys are the same when we're out for a walk, and I say hello to everybody, and they're like, "Do you know that man?"
No,
you know that man. No, why don't you say hello to him?
No, it's a total stranger.
Yeah, exactly. We were discussing that this morning. You tell us not to talk to strangers. Like, well, saying hello to somebody.
yes, the two sides.
It's just that connection, isn't it? And just a smile and a hello. It makes you feel better, but you don't know what it's done to that person as well. They might have been having a really bad day, and you just smiling at them and saying hello. That power of social connection is huge.
And I used to think that it was all about them, if you see what I mean. I thought, I was doing a good deed, and then I realized, no, this is so much for me as well. It really is. And I don't think that's an age thing. I think it's just a realization that connection is so key. And like, I had a big wobbly day on Sunday from nowhere. Off I went on the Menopause, and literally don't know why. I felt absolutely so much better again yesterday. But through that day, I happened to have planned in, but also happened to be phoned by. Sometimes the phone rings from the perfect person at just the right time, and you think, okay, there's something happening here in the universe to link us up. And even that telephone conversation with the right person, and having to go out and meet someone and have a chat, it always makes your day so different. And I'm sure most people really understand that. But the problem, I would imagine, is that often when you're not feeling good about yourself, when you are low, and when perhaps you've got this, misplaced impression that someone's not going to want to be with you because you're like that, then that's probably when suboptimal becomes just the way it is.
Yes, and you carry on living that way, and we go out to work and we speak to people all day, and in our jobs, those of us that have got jobs that are like that, and you just continue, as I said, to run the race, and you might even be customer facing. So for us, we see patients on our NHS days. Every 10 minutes somebody comes through the door, but I could still get to 5 o'clock sometimes and not actually had a conversation about anything beyond the patient in front of me. And actually, somebody knocks on my door, comes in from reception or whatever, and it's just so nice to
and
see
asks
somebody.
You, how are you?
Yes, absolutely. That's the key. It makes that it changes your kind of survival and just going through the necessary processes of the day to giving you a sense of value for who you are and your importance. And I think that we need to really emphasize that. COVID taught us so much about isolation and loneliness, and we must continue to learn from that.
Yeah, just talking about the your NHS days, when I was 12 months ago, I would be at my desk from 8 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock at night. I'd see patients, I'd be doing admin, I wouldn't move, I wouldn't connect with anybody else. And now I consciously, when the reception send me a message saying, "Do you want me to bring through the admin queries?" I say, "No, I'm coming to get them." And I get up, I move, I get a few steps in, I go into reception, I see people, I talk to them, and I take it back to my room. And that's a real conscious thing. It's just getting a bit of movement and connecting with
different
others.
Four walls, really important. Different four walls. I have a GP friend who said that she will always go and collect her patient, even if it takes a little bit of extra time, because not only is it quite nice to be brought into the room rather than the patient having to sort of come in and not quite sure what they're going to expect if they don't know you, but again, it gets the steps in. It's modeling good movement behavior, which is so important for everyone around us, isn't it?
It does, and it just builds on that connection even before you get into the room. And it's the same in our clinic. We go out and find the person that's booked in to see us, and those appointments are so long. So when patients come to see us in our clinic, it's 45 minutes. We say actually allow an hour. That's a long time to be in an appointment for, but we're lucky that we've created a routine that allows us to break up the day. Yes, it feels like we're spinning a few plates sometimes, but it means we move more. So we've got that privilege of protecting that, so that we get to move and we're fresh and we can keep going and
maybe in the middle of your long appointment you can get up and do a spin around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Both of you, let's get up and move.
But that's where you're the role modeling with, not everybody needs equipment, but by having resistance bands to demonstrate, and show what there is to do, you do find yourself, particularly women that are not moving already, that you say the word strength work to somebody or resistance work, and you can see the kind of panic or the that's not achievable. And actually would it be helpful? I often say, would it be helpful if I show you what I mean by that? And some lunges, some squats, anything that's standing on one leg. Can you pick a pen up off the floor? I love that test, because so many of us are from midlife. We very rarely have to get down to pick something up. So that really does bring some movement in.
And I would suggest a little tennis ball in your office to do a little bit of juggling and make it playful and create a game.
Right,
because
there we go.
Gamifying, playfulness changes things immediately and really helps people access the fun and the joy in movement. So that's my little top tip for today.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you. I'll show you when we're doing it.
Yeah, please do
I can juggle. I can juggle.
Can you actually juggle? What was
Can you really? I didn't know that about you.
Yes, I can.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
Right.
Sorry, Katie, that is it. We need to have a shared reel.
Right.
Wendy said bring in games, so I'm doing it. Let's see. I love that.
In terms of that as well, we talk a lot about habit stacking, which is quite an important thing, sort of when you're introducing something. Absolutely. To stack it to something you already do is really important. So, Laura was just saying then about standing on one leg, or, everybody brushes their teeth, hopefully twice a day. So, doing some squats while you brush your teeth, or while you're waiting for the kettle to be boiled for your morning cup of tea or coffee. And if you do that and attach it to a habit you already do, then that becomes a habit itself. So, how many times do we boil the kettle and then stand there waiting for it on our phones normally, scrolling and
next down?
Whereas, put your phone down, do 10 squats, the kettle's boiled, make your tea, and then that's some movement for that hour, isn't it? It's just little things that if you do those regularly, they build up and add up and make a massive, massive improvement to your overall.
And those are the things that I suggest all the time, because I think they're the most accessible. They can also be fun. So last night I posted a reel of me chopping some peppers whilst doing a pretend hula hoop movement.
I saw.
However, the response was kind of like, watch out with the knife and coordination and stuff.
Oh.
Which, I get that.
Thank you.
No, I do get that, but extra brain challenge. But you're right, and one of my main ones is squatting at the washing machine to get the clothes out, because even if your heels are up on something, because you can't get your heels down, doesn't matter. The point is that you're using your lower body, you're lowering down, strengthening that lower body to get down and get back up. If you have to use furniture a bit to get back up, so be it. But just trying to add in those different shapes and patterns is so key. But you're right, I think habit stacking is actually one of the most powerful things for making change, because your brain does associate it. So, I do look at the washing machine and know I've got to get down to it that way. I won't do it any differently, unless I'm exhausted, of course. I really do believe that people all have got the power within them to make change, as long as they're open to it. And I often think, if someone's listening to a podcast like this or comes to your site and something resonates, they're open and they're ready. People often do settle, though, for feeling less than optimal. And I'd love you to leave us with a sort of a message about whether you think that's okay. And if not, then, which I know clearly is the answer, and if not, then, how do they get going and what should they be striving for? And I'd love to go to both of you. So Katie, do you want to go first?
Yeah. So, answer to your question, no, feeling suboptimal, no, is not acceptable. You don't need to suffer in silence. So I think our take home message would be seek help. whether that's self-help, so addressing, sort of as we talked about, looking at your diet, nutrition, your movement, your sleep. There are lots of things that you can do yourself before seeking professional help. So have a look at that, and then don't be fearful of seeking professional help in whatever form that is. Whether that's going to see a doctor or your nurse or a nutritionist, or just seek advice, because there are people out there that want to help and that can help you to feel your best self. So don't suffer in silence would be my take-home point.
Brilliant. Yes. And Laura?
Thanks, Katie. Obviously, I agree entirely. Other suggestions are that if you feel nervous about accessing professional level input, then look around you. There are more and more groups and opportunities to connect with people that are like-minded or experiencing the same thing. So that can really help you feel less isolated and open the mind to other ideas as to what help is out there. You can learn from other women that are experiencing things. So is that in your workplace? Is there something you can access, or just locally? We spend a lot of our time on social media. There's lots of support groups that do meet in person. So there's cafes and support ideas there. But also, if you're not feeling yourself and you've already accessed treatment, I think it's really important that actually you can have that reviewed. So we prescribe, as well as prescribe lifestyle, we prescribe medications, HRT, or whatever it is for a woman, how it looks. But if you don't feel yourself, even though you've already tried something, then try again. There's other things that need to be looked at. You might not get it right first time. And if you feel the door has been closed, then don't let that put you off opening a door in a different direction.
Yeah, so don't sell yourself short. No. Put priority on how you feel, and know that you have a right to feel well. There's no reason not to, if you're, as you say, you do everything that you can. So yeah.
I think the other take-home point, sorry, just to add, Wendy, is it's never too late or too early to start moving.
Yes.
So we've not touched on this, but you start losing bone mass and bone density, muscle mass and bone density in your 30s. So hitting these midlife in the best possible shape you can is important. So it's never too early to start sort of building that muscle mass and doing more exercise. But equally, it's never too late. So if you're in your 60s, 70s, 80s, and you're not very mobile, make that change. Absolutely. It's never too late.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And my mantra, all movement counts. So whatever the thing is, just moving, and moving more frequently, doing different things, and looking at the end of that movement and thinking, do I feel better than I did before I started? If it's a yes, which hopefully it is, then you're more likely to do it again. You're more likely to create that lovely positive feedback loop, which is just so important that we all applaud ourselves. We're so good at putting ourselves down or saying things aren't good enough, or we're not doing that thing. And actually what we're doing is great. So, we have to empower ourselves as well, I believe.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time, ladies. It's been really, really lovely conversation. I've really enjoyed it. And I'm sure people will have got a lot out of it, lots of practical stuff to really think around the whole topic, which is fantastic. So I said, your Instagram is at the Lifestyle Health Clinic. Your website is the same, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So they can find you there if anyone feels like they want to reach out and use your services. And you're not just a local entity, you're also online, aren't you? So you have a nicer, broader reach, which is great. So it's not limited at all, which is fantastic. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having us, Wendy. It's been good to chat.
Yeah. Take care.
I hope you've enjoyed listening, and if you have, you can help by doing 3 things. First, press the follow button to tell podcast platforms you want to listen again. Second, please give the show a 5-star rating and leave a review about why you liked it. And third, I'd love you to share it with friends and family or on your socials, for which I am truly thankful. Finally, if this podcast is making you want to start reclaiming your own movement, join me in the Reclaim Movement membership for classes, both live and by replay, and countless videos of mini movement breaks to add into your daily life, covering practical and fun, important natural movements. Visit reclaimmovement.co.uk/membership to get started with your 7-day free trial. See you for the next episode, and thank you so much for listening.